It's Tuesday, March 3rd, and we have essentially a week-long severe weather system that's going to be moving through the southern and central plains. Here's what it's going to look like today. Here's what it's going to look like tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and even into. So even though it's only the third official day of severe weather season, already a very active start. Luckily for today, though, it's just going to be a general thunderstorm threat moving through Oklahoma up through the Ohio River Valley. And this marginal risk is only going to be a very conditional late night threat of a couple of high elevation hailers, which has probably about a 50-50 chance of actually seeing anything happen. So luckily, damaging winds and tornadoes are not in the cards today. However, we are going to see our first couple of storms moving through the OKC general area when our boundary pushes through in the late afternoon hours. We're going to have a little plume of 60-degree Fahrenheit dew points right here and a decent bit of convergence that's going to start up. Now, these storms are going to have a pretty solid environment to them. They're actually going to have probably about 1,500 joules per kilogram of CAPE, and then not bad dew points around 60 degrees Fahrenheit. However, the main thing they're going to be lacking is shear, and then there's also going to be this big cap, and these storms are really not anticipated to overcome this cap. So that's why right here, we're not really seeing that much organized convection along this boundary. Now, what the SPC has actually marked today for in that marginal risk is going to come in the later hours. This is going to be probably around 2 to 3 a.m., where we could maybe get a storm or two in the Texas Panhandle, and then along the Oklahoma-Kansas border, maybe some convection. And this is going to be a very conditional threat for maybe a couple of storms producing large hail, probably 2 inches at the most. And this is the environment for it. Now, at first glance, we do see that at the surface, the ingredients are pretty poor, 40 degrees Fahrenheit dew points, and then it's just going to be 45 degrees. And if these storms were surface based, that would not be solid. But luckily, our effective inflow layer doesn't start until we see our environment get pretty solid. So up here, we're actually seeing around mid 60s dew point and 65-degree temperatures. And of course, these storms are going to be elevated. And that's actually good news for these storms because at the surface, there's essentially no instability. But up here, there's around 1,500 joules per kilogram of CAPE. So this is going to be pretty solid for hail producing potential. And then also we have around 50 to 55 knots of shear up here, which is going to be really good for those storms to spin those updrafts. Also, looking over here at our hodograph, we see kind of a solid elongation out. Not that much streamwise flow in the upper layers, but there's definitely going to be a decent bit in between 4 to 5 kilometers up in the atmosphere, which is going to be a kind of ideal layer for these more elevated storms. So that's definitely why we're seeing that hail potential, and also why we're not going to see any potential at all for tornadoes or damaging winds with these storms. And this is really going to be the main thing that's triggering it. We're going to have a short wave that pulses through around when we start to see those storms get kicked up. I want you to look at this little area of enhanced flow right here. We'll kind of see it pop in, really start to organize itself and push through around 3 a.m. over there. Then this is going to continue through the day, Wednesday, but moving back towards Tuesday, we're going to see a lot of enhanced flow moving over into our general thunderstorm risk in the Ohio River Valley. And when I switch over to just what our general weather across the country is, it's going to pretty much mirror our flow almost entirely. And that's just going to be because we have a lot of air kind of converging at that point, kind of crashes into it. And that's why we see those storms track along that. Then there's also going to be a warm front here. Now, why these storms aren't going to be stronger is because there's really a lack of instability in moisture, but our shear parameters are going to be pretty solid. So wouldn't be astonished to see maybe a couple of strong gusts. Nothing severe, though, to be expected to be associated with that. And then a little preview into the rest of our big severe weather that we're expecting. This is what it's going to look like Wednesday. Probably around late Wednesday afternoon is when we're going to see the strongest of those storms bubble up along that line, specifically in that slight risk area. And it looks like the main threat with this is probably going to be damaging winds along that line. Moving into Thursday, once again, seen maybe a potential for a couple of storms down in the southern and central plains. Definitely something to look out for. Then this pattern is really going to continue until we move all the way into Saturday, where we can still see storms bubbling up in really the same general region out there. So this is definitely going to be something to watch. Luckily, none of these events look like they're going to be crazy strong, and it does look like the main thing with all these to consider is going to be damaging winds. So definitely want to be on the heads up for that.